Welcome back to QuickBooks again. So today we are looking at chapter 4. All right, we're going to be dealing with managing expenses. Now, with expenses, most commonly, expenses are always hand in hand because when you're dealing with expenses, you will always more or less receive a bill. And in order to receive a bill, it's going to be 100% connected to a vendor. So this chapter not only is dealing with expenses, it's also dealing with your vendors as a whole. So of course, all these topics we're going to talk about, we opened up expenses. So let's go ahead and dive right into the lesson. So first off, it's going to be entering expenses into QuickBooks. There, as I've mentioned before, most expenses are going to be dealing with bills. And as you can see here, we got only one option and one option only. We're going to enter our bills in, okay? Now, before we can even go ahead and do that, we need to understand, well, what is the necessary things that constitute for us reasoning to enter in a bill? Obviously, with QuickBooks, because we're keeping track of, or we're using QuickBooks to help us keep track of our bills, right? As a company, right, you're going to have stacks and stacks and stacks of bills. Sometimes you'll get to it, sometimes you may never. You might hold it off for another day, right? So it is very important that when you receive a bill and you open it up and you see the details and everything looks correct, that's where you're going to go ahead and enter it into QuickBooks. Now, needless to say, you don't have to do it at the second you receive your bill. It is it's recommended, especially when you have a due date. All right, it's time sensitive, right? You can't just hold off entering your bills in 15 days later when it's expected to be due that day. However, when we learn in QuickBooks, you can retrospectively enter all those transactions, right? You don't technically have to be on the exact date as of today, right? You're able to do that beyond that. And that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be entering transactions that happened 2 years ago. All right. So actually 2 years ago. All right. But that's okay. So first things first is the main chapter of this is actually trying to introduce you to the home page as well as the vendor center. So as we know, when we look at our home page, right, if we're dealing with bills or our vendors, it is going to be this very top part right here. So as you can see, the home page is split into 3 segments. It's split into your vendor segment, your customer segment, and your employee segment. So as you can see, each one that's it's split for, it deals with the transactions that exist with that person in particular. So again, we're looking at entering bills, which is directly correlated with our vendors, okay? So first thing I want to show you is what the vendor center is. So we've mentioned this a few times before in our previous lesson in chapter 1, that one way to be able to enter in or navigate our transactions is by using either a center. Okay, so in a center, there are 3 main centers, right? It's usually the people that we are focused with. But as we go through the lesson and the chapters, you're going to learn that there's a payroll center, right? It doesn't have to do with your employee center. It's a separate center, a payroll center. You're going to learn that there's an inventory center. You're going to learn that there's a report center, okay? But the main ones that you want to focus on is the primary 3, which is dealing with the people that pretty much help you with your company, which is your vendors, right? Anybody that's a supplier or an independent contractor. You have your customers, anybody that you do sales to, that you sell to, and then lastly, your employees, the people who work for you, all right? But for today, we're focusing on just the vendor center. And as you can see, when I'm in my vendor center, it's a pretty nice, decent looking section here, right? We have a list of all my vendors that I've inputted into QuickBooks as of whatever 2018. So all of these right here, I can click on them, and it's just a list of all my vendors, and they have their respective account balances. So as I can see, the state of equalization, I owe them all. I owe them $99.33, and here I owe Wong and Son $142 even. Now, as you progress and see and make connections, these people are going to be your accounts payable people, all right? So as we understand accounts payable, it's when you don't pay right away, you owe them, okay? So again, and we determine that accounts payable is a liability. It's also an obligation. We are obligated to make payments to these people because in order to make payments to these people, we either get in exchange a service or a product. So again, a lot of our vendors, right, they provide either service to us, right? Usually most 1099 contractors, right? They work for us, but essentially they're providing service for us. All right. Same thing here. Our suppliers are the ones that we pay to get products to sell in forth. Okay. So those are usually who your vendor people are. So again, the vendor center is pretty nifty. You got a list of all the people, all the vendors that you make connections with their account balances. And every time you click on one of the vendors, so example here, I'm going to click on Ace Supply. It's on the right side, you have at the top right, you have a quick overview of their information, right? Something that you could quickly peek over, such as their name, their phone number, their address, etc., etc. Okay, so really quick right there, it's there, all right? Down below is going to be the list of all the transactions that you have with this vendor. So for example, right, if I were to click Wong and Son, right? Right now it shows me I have 0 transactions, but it shows here on my little balance here that I still owe them $142 even, right? So what I have to do is you're gonna have to do this just because one thing that we know is that this is time sensitive. So all these information were way back into the past. So obviously QuickBooks, right, it's taking the most recent as of today, which is February 11, 2021. So it's going to automatically assume that you're talking about this year with this transaction. But in this case, like we talked about, we're retrospectively entering details that happened in the past. Okay, so here, if I click all transactions, so making sure that this is all types of whether it's an invoice or whatever it is that I have, or sorry, bill or credit, whatever it is, right? And I want it to reflect all the dates, and I want to reflect all the dates. Sorry, right? Once I do that, then boom, I have a bill, right? That is for bill number 2,342, and it is for the amount of the 142. So here is where we get to see our transactions, all right? Now, there's cool things that you can do too is when you're in the vendor center, you're able to double click on it and it will pop up the bill for you. So you get to see here. And when you look at your bill, you're going to see in red that it should be past due. It doesn't show it here. But it's supposed to be right here saying past due. But yes, okay, and we'll talk about bills in a second, but for now, that's what you can do when it comes to dealing with the customer, dealing with your vendors at that time, right? You can check out what is going on and what you need necessary to see what transactions you have with this particular person. This is going to be where most, if not all, transactions that's dealing with your vendors, you can do them all in the vendor center. If you go up to the top, right, you have that new transaction little tab right here, and you'd be able to complete the following. You can either enter a bill, pay a bill, do a purchase order, receive items, or even receive items against and a bill, or you can even enter a bill for, okay, I just said that twice. So yes, those are the main ones that you can do, right? But if you actually right click on an individual person, let's say I right click my Ace Supply, it gives you even more transactions you can do with this particular customer. You can either make this vendor inactive. Again, those 4 things that we looked at, you can write a check to them. You can even create purchase orders with them. You can even enter in credit card transactions, etc., etc. You could even do a quick report on their activities. You could even check out their open balances. So there's a lot that you can do by right-clicking. But you can also find those things down here at the manage transactions. It gives you a little broader here as well, spectrum of what you can do. And again, you can also run reports. Running reports, right, will allow you to run a report based on all the transactions that you have between with this particular vendor. Now, of course, we will also in the book take a look at how you're able to run a report on every single person that exists in your vendor center. Okay, but that's really cool what you can do here in the vendor center. All right. And one thing I actually wanted to introduce you to is going to be, this is new for the 2018 version of QuickBooks. So this is, well, we're now in 2021, but you know, just it's taught at the very end of the book, but I think it's definitely should be something that should be worth mentioning in the beginning of the book, because in this case, it's a new feature that QuickBooks decided to integrate, and it's called the bill tracker. So with this bill tracker, as you can see, it lets me know all of my bills that are pending, and it even gives me at the very top of the window what bills are open, what bills do I still owe, or what total amount that I owe, what are still past due or overdue, and then lastly, what are ones that we've actually paid in the last 30 days. So in this case, obviously, this one will never change because we're not paying within the last 30 days. It's assuming that we're in February 11th of 2021. But in this case, that will never change. But it allows you to see a list of every single bill that you've created or that you've received, right? And you can also do most of the main functions here as well for the transactions. You can enter in a bill, you can enter a credit card charge, you can have a purchase order done, you can even write a check. So again, you could do most of the majority functions just right here in the bill tracker. All right. So now that I introduced you to the platform here, now I'm actually going to talk about what different types of vendors that exist in QuickBooks. Okay. So this one's pretty straightforward. I still got to teach it to you anyway. But in your book, it says that you have 2 different types of vendors. You have your cash vendors, and then you have your credit vendors. Straightforward. Any vendor or any expense that you deal with the people, right? If you pay them at time of when the service was done or provided with either a check or whether you place it on a credit card, those are your cash those are your cash vendors. Straightforward. You're not going to receive a bill. You're not going to be receiving anything from them because you're paying at time of the service or whatever it is. You're paying at the store. All right? And with those ones, you're going to associate those kind of payments either using either writing a check, writing an actual manual check, right, which we'll talk about in a second, and et cetera, right? Where your credit vendors, They're the ones that are going to complete a job, and the one thing that they're going to do is they're going to send you a bill, and what you need to do is you need to enter that bill into QuickBooks, and then you need to pay that bill when the time comes. All right? Straightforward. So as you can say, if you were to break it down to down even further, your cash vendors, you're dealing with cash. Where your credit vendors, you're dealing with accounts payable. So you're creating more of a liability because you owe them money. All right. So now that we got that cleared away, let's talk about how to even set up a vendor in the first place. All right. Well, yes, let's do that first, and then I'll talk about how to use the vendor center. Let's talk about that first. There are exactly total 3 ways to get to your vendor center. All right. So we already looked at the first one by going to the home page, right? Home page, it's going to be that little tab in blue that says vendors in capital letters. You click on that, you're at the vendor center. All right. That's one way. Second way is going to be on your menu bar, right? If you're on your menu bar under vendors, first thing you see is a vendor center. Okay. And then the last way to get to the vendor center is going to be on your icon bar. We talked about this as well very briefly yesterday, but yes, most of your icons usually take you to some kind of center. So again, if you have vendors and you select that vendors on that icon, it's a shortcut to get to the vendor center. All right? 3 ways to get to the vendor center. Now, how to enter in a new vendor? There's only 2 ways. You have to make it somehow to the vendor center first. All right? As you can see, if you go to the home page, there's nowhere it says to enter in a new vendor. Okay, you would actually have to do it using the vendor center. Even if you go to the vendor's menu bar, there's no option for you to enter in a new vendor. Okay. All right, so understand that small portion there. You need to go to the vendor center in order to create a new vendor. So here, so there. Remember, I showed you 3 ways to get to the vendor center: either the home page, menu bar, or the icon bar. Once you're here, there's 2 ways to get to enter in a new vendor. You could go up here at the very top corner right here, and you can, as it says right here, new vendor. So you can drop down this menu, and you can go ahead and click the new vendor. All right. And then, of course, the quickest other shortcut to do is you click anywhere on your vendor center. Anywhere. You could even click on someone's name. And you'd be able to enter in a new vendor. Okay? All right. So, now let me show you another thing as well. You have 2 options when it comes into entering in a new vendor. You have the choice where you can either enter them one at a time, or you can enter them multiple at one time. Now, again, so here is how we enter in stuff like a list, like I've mentioned before. So you do have 2 ways that you're able to do this. Now, this is actually for more advanced users of QuickBooks, okay? If you are a pre-existing company and you're using QuickBooks for the first time, right? But it's not like you establish your business for the first time. You've been existing. In this case, what this allows you to do is it actually allows you to import an Excel spreadsheet that has a list of all your vendor contact information and place it in here. All right. Again, that is advanced level of QuickBooks. All right. It doesn't talk about it in the book, so as far as certification, you don't need to know it. But it does help to know that you're, instead of having to sit there and enter one vendor at one time, it is handy to know that you can enter them a lot at one time. All right. And you don't need to go through this series of questions or anything. It's pretty straightforward, right? We see here that you need the company name. You need to know who's the owner of the company. You need to know their first name and their middle name if they have one, and a last name, right? And you need to fill in all this extra information here. So what you can do is if you already have an Excel spreadsheet that that has your customer contact list just like this or something similar, all you're going to do is you're going to line up each cell or each row, each column. You're going to line them up exactly how you have it in QuickBooks. And what you're going to do is you're going to copy and paste it in here. Or you could actually, if this whole thing is blank, you can actually import it. You can actually import it using Excel. So again, QuickBooks and Microsoft has integrated themselves, so it makes it a lot more easier and makes it a lot more flexible when it comes to data entry. Okay, but of course I'm going to show you what the book teaches you. I just wanted to let you know that if for any reason you do decide that you are entering in every single piece of information, and if you're doing it one at a time, there is a quicker and easier way to just go ahead and enter them in at multiple vendors at one time to save you some more time to do. All right. But in this case, I'm going to teach you what the book says, which is to teach you how to enter in one vendor at a time. So by going to the top part and you clicking that new vendor, it's going to give you this nice little form that you have to fill. All right. On the left panel is going to be things that you need to fill out. Is it mandatory that you fill everything out? Absolutely not. It's whatever information that you gather for this particular vendor. Some places, and we'll learn how to do a quick add. Things like if you just want to just only have the vendor's name, then that's all the information you need. You don't need to do research and search everything about them unless you plan to send them a check. Then yes, you definitely need their address and etc. things like that too. All right. Or if there's information that's pertinent to you and to the future transaction, then go ahead and fill it in. All right. So the first thing that we're going to fill in here is it's going to ask you what is the person's name, or what do you want them to look, what is it, who is this company and what is their name. All right. Now, first thing it's going to say is at the top right here is important that you need to know this because, again, when we talked about the difference between a company name and a legal name, is the same thing that applies here. When we enter in a name at the top here, it's what we want it to appear on our list. Okay? Whereas the actual company name is whatever the company name is. Now, if you completely forgot about this, which is okay, and you enter in Boswell Consulting here, it's automatically going to copy that information right at the top right here. So QuickBooks, it recognizes that you're entering a vendor name, but again, if you start here and you enter in the person's name first, then your company name is going to be whatever the logistic name is, the legal name. All right. Little fun fact there, because oftentimes when I've placed in Mr. Ron Perry, I type in Ron Perry, and when it shows up on my vendor list, it's Ron Perry, not Perry Ron. Okay. So, yes, so our person here is, we know that this is going to be a vendor, and they're going to be Boswell Consulting. So we're going to go ahead and, because I want them to save me some time, so Boswell Consulting. Okay. And then again, like I said, if I don't fill it in, it's going to fill it in for me automatically at the top. And that's fine. It's not like I can do consulting Boswell. It's not a person. All right. So then the next question is, what day were they your actual what day were they your actual customer? So in this case, this one could be any date because it doesn't really matter at this point, but it's definitely you want to enter them in as soon as they make their first transaction with you. Because usually if that's the first time you're even talking or even know who this person is, then that would be the general date that you would place that they are starting as of this date. Okay, but for me, I can care. I don't really care. I could say that he started just now. Now again, before that there's an opening balance. Now, we talked about this too in chapter 12 is that if you place an opening balance with Mr. Boswell, right? The one thing that QuickBooks is not going to know is it's not going to know what's going to happen when we actually make a payment to Mr. Boswell because it doesn't associate that you owe it will always reflect that you owe Mr. Boswell this amount of money. So the general rule of thumb is you leave this always blank, and let's say you do owe him money, you're going to retroactively place the bill from when you receive the bill and when it's due. Okay, so then QuickBooks knows that you owe Mr. Boswell and it's a bill, and when you make a payment to him, it will make the connections and say that you're actually making a bill payment versus I just wrote a check out for no reason to Boswell Consultant. Okay, and this will make more sense when we talk about when we enter in our bills. Okay, so in this case, my amount is 0. Okay, and I'm just gonna leave the date the way it is. So Boswell Consultant. Now, usually they always say, how would you address him? He's going to be a Mr. All right, and his name is Steven. Okay, Steven, Steven. All right, and I can't remember if he has a middle name or not. I think it's
doesn't have one in here.
Perfect. And his last name, of course, is Boswell. Mm-hmm. All right, and what is he? He is the owner. So again, this allows you to give you allows you to enter whatever you want to enter in here. Main phone number.
510-555.
505-10-555. What else?
0305.
0305. All right. Does he have a work phone number or a mobile phone or a fax number?
510-555-5500.
5500. All right. Okay, good. Email address. Okay, main email. It's probably going to be at Steve at Boswell right now. Oh, I can't spell. Boswell right now. .biz. Okay.
It doesn't matter what we're putting in there, right? It's got it as US.
Oh, it is? Okay, perfect. That's fine too. Then yes, .us. In this case, no, because, these are all fake people. They're not real. But yes, you definitely, if it's a real person, you definitely want to make sure you get their email right. Okay, website, same thing here. It's going to be www.boswellrightnow. .us. Okay. Now notice this. As I keep filling the information, notice that it's also filling in the address down below, right? I see here Boswell Consulting. I see Stephen Boswell right here. So that's what's really cool about QuickBooks is it's starting to pick up a lot of data, and it's copying them into places that to make it help it easier to fill out. So again, the address is going to be
PO Box 620.
P.O. Box 620,
Oakland, California.
Oakland, comma, California, 9.
4610.
Perfect. Okay, so there you go. And here's another great thing too. Maybe this vendor has multiple addresses. It could be true. This is his business, but what if he wants the mail to be sent to his personal home or for whatever reason? All right. So yes, you can do that if he has a separate shipping address. But in this case, we are going to use the copy tool that allows us saying that, well, his billing address is the same thing as his shipping address. So it's gonna ask me, well, do I want Boswell Consultant at the top or do I just want Steven? In this case, both is perfectly fine because I'm making sure that it gets to both either or Boswell Consultant or even to Steven himself. So in this case, I'm verifying that these are correct, and I'm gonna click OK. And what it's gonna do is it's gonna magically copy everything right into this box. So that saves us an even more time because it allows us to copy and paste in here. Now, oftentimes when there is a reason that his shipping address is different, you just add whatever address there is here. Okay. So now that we've completed the first section here, next section is we're going to be looking at our payment settings. So I'm going to go ahead and click payment settings and let's see what I have here. So first thing is, do I have an account number with Mr. Steve Boswell? So again, we're looking at information that's pertinent to us because he's our vendor. We're not looking at what he has an account with us. We're looking at what our account number is with him. So in this case, I believe it's like
66-112.
Oh, 112, sorry. 66. Oh, there you go, 112. Okay, good. So that is our account number. All right, it's definitely something that we should definitely know. Is there a credit limit?
No.
No. And then when we have our billing rate, do we have a billing rate level?
No.
No, we don't. So again, this is the same thing when we talked about our customers, right? What kind of price level do we get? In this case, he's an independent contractor. He doesn't care who you are, all right? He's still going to charge the same price. All right, so same thing. Okay, so now going further down is going to be payment terms. So again, if you set the payment terms here, that means every time we receive a bill from Mr. Boswell, it's going to automatically associate. It's going to pull this information from the vendor center, right, their profile, and say that, hey, that means your terms should be this. Now, for any reason that they exclude the terms or they deny the terms, you can always modify it on the actual bill itself, okay? So in this case, is it 2% 10 net 30?
Yes.
Perfect. All right, and then right below says that what would you like the print name to be on the actual check that you write, that you send, or whatever it is? I think Boswell Consulting should be perfectly fine. You don't need to write it to him because he's the owner of the company. It's still going to go to him no matter what. All right, so now that I have that, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next one. It's going to be tax settings. Now, this is very, very important for you to know as well, is that most vendors will have some kind of ID. So if it is a company, they're going to have an employer identification number, or in this case, a tax ID number.
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, this is an independent contractor. So that means I'm going to be getting Mr. Boswell's social security number, correct? I believe if I'm not mistaken, you can apply for a business identification number if you are an independent contractor. That's that. I think that's an option you can choose because it's kind of dangerous to just give anybody your social security number. But most cases, independent contractors, they are most likely to use their own social security number. So in this case, is it one? Is it 123 dash
12
12/12?
1234.
Perfect. All right. And because he's an independent contractor, your first obligation, you need to make sure that you check mark this. Now, what is the purpose of this? If you do file taxes using QuickBooks, QuickBooks is going to go through all your lists and make sure to verify that Mr. Steve Boswell is in fact a 1099 contract worker. Okay, so this is also a way to verify that when he files his taxes and when we file our taxes, that it is actually going to be 100% accurate. Okay, because he can tell us he's an independent contractor, give us our social security, but when we file and they check to make sure he is one, it could pop up that he's a sole proprietor or that he's actually working for another company. So that's one thing that QuickBooks uses this piece of information. But again, if it is, you have to know that when you do have a 1099 worker as the employer, you do need to file. I believe is it called a 10? I think it's called the 1080, where you have to file the taxes for that independent contractor. So this is also one of the places that can help you manage that instead of having to do it yourself. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Oh, it's 1098. I'm sorry. Did I say something else? 1098 is the one we file taxes for. 1099 is the actual thing. All right. So again, now that we finished that section here, we dealt with our taxes. So now the next thing is going to be looking at account settings. So this is where we're going to be looking at how does Mr. Boswell fit in our company? What does he do that affects our company? In this case, he is our actual legitimate consulting it's called professional fees.
Yes, professional fees.
Typo. Professional fees or professional services. So in this case, it is called professional fees. So that means we actually are seeking Mr. Boswell for either or, most likely business related questions. Okay, because I'm not quite sure what Mr. Boswell really does. Is he a consultant that we hire to do our sales? I don't know. I really don't know at this point. But because it's under professional fees, I'm assuming that he's actually consulting for us. So professional fees, as you can see, it's an actual expense that is part of the company. All right. And then of course most 1099 workers, right? They're always going to be written off as an expense. They're not part of your payroll, right? And here, of course, you have up to 3 accounts that this person can be linked to, such as, for example, if I were to link, a supplier, right? He's the person that's going to be involved in majority of which is my cost of goods sold and my inventory, right? So we can list all those extra expenses that are involved with him. But in this case, he's only going to provide us professional services, so he is professional fees. Now we are here finally at the very last section here at our additional information. So a few things that are going to be listed here. Again, we talked briefly about this in chapter 7. So what kind of vendor type does he belong to? He's going to belong to a consultant. Okay, because that's just what he does. But let's take a look at vendor types. What are vendor types? Honestly, it's pretty straightforward, right? Are they a supplier? Are they a tax agency? Or are they utilities? When you pay for rent, Are they the people who's property management? You can create as many vendor types as you like if you want to. It's unnecessary. I mean, yeah, it's not necessary unless you want to categorize your vendors and keep track of your vendors based on what category they belong to. But in this case, we have them for consulting. All right. It only makes your data entry just more organized. All right. And lastly, what county does he belong to? He belongs to Alameda. A L I M
L
no
A
E
L A L
Ala M I
M
D
E.
oh D A. All right, there you go, Alameda.
There you go.
I always get that one wrong, and I used to live in California. I should always get that one right all the time, but no, I always get that one wrong. So there you go, Alameda. Now, let's say I learned a few more information about Mr. Boswell. So I want to include it in here, right? I'm going to go ahead and click define fields. Now, as we remember yesterday,
Oh yeah.
what constitutes as something that you want to know about Mr. Boswell? Since he's an independent contractor, you definitely want to know their spouse's name, right? Because they're the one that's working for you personally, right? I guess, or one-to-one on a one-to-one basis. So you definitely knowing their spouse's name sounds like that should be something plausible, you know. Other things could be like since they're an independent contractor, they also want to maybe invite you to their business party, their company party, or even usually small businesses, right? They're very big on celebrating their 10th year anniversary, 20-year anniversary, things like that. So maybe business establishment date is a good one. Okay? And of course, that's only going to apply to my vendor. It's not that my customers can't establish any businesses or my employees, but most likely that's going to be pertaining to this person in particular. And then let's say you found out that he likes to do some hobbies. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and say that will apply for all three. And I'm gonna click OK. Question to you. Let's see if you remember this. How many total custom fields can I create in total?
I want to say 7.
Okay, 7
it's-
is. Go ahead.
I want to say 7, but I was thinking there was more if you were splitting it up between each one.
Okay.
But I believe it's 7.
7 is what you can have per person. Okay. But the grand total of as many fields as you can do is 15.
It's 15. Okay.
All right.
Close.
You were close. Out of those 15, you can only choose 7 to apply to one person. Okay. And of course, that's why we have this little check mark box here, because one custom field can apply to multiple people. All right, so I'm going to click OK, and it's going to give me this message. I'm going to click, I don't want to display this anymore, so I'm going to click OK. So now I'm going to go ahead and fill in the information here. Let's say his spouse's name. Let's say, so Steven, I'm going to say her name's Linda. Linda Boswell. Okay. Business establishment date. I'm going to say May 25th, 2010. So he's been around for 11 years now, 10 years now. All right. And hobbies. He likes sports. Okay. All right. Now that I completed out my additional information, I can go ahead and click OK. And what's going to happen is it's going to automatically place your person right in alphabetical order in your list. All right. So again, here and usually when you finish their profile, it's automatically highlighted. So it tells you, well, you just added this person in there. Okay. So that is how you enter in a vendor. All right, any questions?
Got it. No, I got it. I'm following
No.
right along in the book.
Perfect. Good. That's exactly what I'm following along to. I'm following the book too. So now that we figured out how to finally enter in our first vendor, or just one vendor, and then you can figure out how to do the rest, right? It's the same rinse and repeat. We're going to be adding them in one at a time, or you can add them in a bunch at a time. All right. So once we've already solved, if we finished up to that one, the next one is going to be activating class tracking. So this is very, very important because it allows you to categorize your income and your expenses based on a list of these things, right? It could be, you can separate them based on line of product, your product line. It could be your profit center. It could be based on location, right? And it could be any other meaningful way. So, for example, right, PepsiCo. PepsiCo owns soda, right? But their line of production could be they don't only just sell sodas, they sell waters, they sell teas, they sell juices. Do you know that? They sell beyond that. Okay? They're not just recognized as just a soda brand. They go beyond that. So that's one way that you can separate your income and your expenses, because obviously the production for soda might be a lot cheaper than producing orange juice, right? Or bottled water, right? So, of course, with that being said, that way, when you organize your income or your expenses based on those kind of classes, it allows you to see which division or which location, if you use location, is more profitable, or which benefits you the most. Or it also allows you to see which division costs you the most. So as you know, right? PepsiCo, they're widely known for their soda brands. They don't have just Pepsi. They create Sierra Mist. They create was it Mug, right, with the root beer. They create beyond that, Mountain Dew, all that stuff. So you can expect that division is going to cost way more to produce, and on top of that, because they're widely known for their sodas, that's going to be the highest income out of the three divisions, right? Not many people like Aquafina, not many, other, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Now, with that being said, you're not only limited to just those kind of options, okay? You can, if you don't want to do line of business, you can do profit centers, or you can do locations. Now, for this example in this book, we have 2 store locations. We have one in San Jose and we have one in Walnut Creek. So for this rest of this class, all right, when we enter in a class tracking, we need to make sure that we separate our classes based, or separate our expenses and income based on our location. All right, and then I'm going to show you later on, when we do our reports and whatnot, how cool it is to see that which store is doing better than the other. Okay, but that's chapter 6. That's not until next week. But just looking at this, so you know how to activate class tracking, it's pretty easy. And on top of that, you're not obligated to have class tracking unless you find it meaningful for you to extract any extra data. So again, if you find that you want to make sure that you want to know which line of business is doing better, this is how you do it. All right? But you don't need to do it. It's not mandatory. All right? So how I do that is I'm going to go to my edit menu bar and go to my preferences. And I'm going to actually go to the very first one, which is called accounting, all right, on the left panel. And then I'm going to click my company preferences, and I'm going to go ahead and locate where it says use class tracking. So right now it's already checked marked. Okay, so that means because again this company has two stores, right? They're using the San Jose and they're using the Walnut Creek locations. They've been doing it already. This is a sample file, don't forget about that. So now what we're going to do with this is we're going to continue separating our income and expenses based on those two store locations. But that's just how you turn them on. If you don't ever need to use it, you can go ahead and uncheck mark that, and when you look at your forms, then you're not going to have a little section to fill in what class they belong to. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and click cancel. All right. Now, the next section we have here is going to be talking about job costing. Now, job costing allows us to also tack on expenses to our particular customer. This is not really widely used until Chapter 2 when we deal with our customers at large, and when we look into Chapter 9 when we talk about billable expenses. All right? So for this, all you need to really understand for job costing is you're separating your expenses and your income, and you're tailoring it to a specific customer. All right? So I'll give you like a small example so that you can keep this in your mind. Let's say one of my customers decides to ask us to buy a custom camera. All right, because they're going through us and we go through another vendor, right? They're using us as a middleman, you can say. So because we are purchasing this exact item for this person, we're going to categorize them and tack this on so then the bill goes straight to them. It doesn't go to anybody else. And it doesn't affect our inventory because this is going to be a custom order that I made for this particular customer. So that's an example, just so that you can put, make sense out of it. But it won't make sense fully until we dive into primarily Chapter 9. Chapter 9 is where we're going to talk about all about tacking on expenses to specific customers. Where Chapter 2, we talk a little in depth on what you can do. All right? Mm-hmm. All right. Now, next section is talking about how you pay your vendors. So again, I've mentioned this before. The book associates two different types of vendors, right? You got your cash vendors, which you either pay either at time of service with either cash or an actual check, or you can pay with a credit card, okay? And then you have your credit vendors, which are people that provide a service to you and then they just send you a bill and expect you to pay them later. So that's the difference between cash and credit, right? You get paid at time of service, or the other one is you don't pay now, you pay later. So same thing here. So the idea is that it is categorized into three ways that you can pay your vendor. One of them is by writing a manual check. All right. So I'm not quite sure if they still do these now anymore because of the new vast majority of using online or electronic funds transfer, or you have reimbursements. If someone goes and pays for something, you always have that reimbursement. So if they still do, right, when you go to the bank's going to give you an actual physical checkbook with all the details in regards to your business. That is what I'm talking about, a manual checkbook. Something that you walk around and if you didn't make a business expense, you just write a check and cut it and then just give it to the person. All right? Second one is going to be obviously using Intuit's Write a Check that allows you to, if it's better for you, when you write the check out to whether it's your vendor or, for a mere expense, then you can print it out and send the check to them. Okay, so one of them is already having a manual book, and the other one is you're printing the check as you go. All right, and those are obviously going to be for your cash vendors. All right, and then the last bullet that talks here is when you receive a bill, the proper way to go ahead and pay your vendor is to use the pay bills option. All right, and how you pay your bills using the pay your bills option, you can choose the same 3 ways. You can either write a check, charge it on your credit card, or do electronic funds transfer. All right, so those are the 3 ways that you can write pay a vendor, and we're going to explore every single one. Now, we talked about entering or using registers, okay? So this is actually where, one of the ways that you can enter in a transaction is by using the register. And we're going to take a look at how to do it firsthand right now, okay? So in this case, we wrote a manual check out to this person, all right? So in order to record it in our QuickBooks, we have to go to either the check register, okay, or we actually write a check and we modify the information, all right? But in this case, we're gonna write a check in the second exercise. So let's go ahead and show you how to do the first one, okay? We're gonna be taking a look at the check register. Okay, and there are a total of 3 ways you can get to the checking register. All right, you could do it on the home page, right, by going to this little section under banking, and you have check register. Of course, when you click on it, it's going to ask you which account are you actually wanting to look at, and we want to make sure that this does say checking, and it does. So I click OK. All right, and then if you look at here, it looks like an Excel spreadsheet. Pretty much gives you the details right here. It gives you the date, gives you the check number, it gives you who you paid, what did you pay for, how much you paid for, and it will calculate for you automatically. All right, and we're gonna take a look at how to enter it in. But that's just the first way to get into the check register. All right. Second way that your book also tells you is that you can do it by going to the banking on the menu bar and then click on use register. And the same window is going to pop up. Well, which register do you want to look up? And in this case, I want to be in checking. I click OK. Boom. There's my checking register. All right. And then the last way to get there is through your chart of accounts. So however way you get to your chart of accounts, right? I'm going to go on my home page and go to my chart of accounts. And in this case, I can double click my checking account and it will automatically pop up my checking register. All right? So there are 3 ways to get to the check register, and the book only shows you 2. Okay? Now, you do need to know at least all the ways, because when you do get tested for the QuickBooks, right, the first, second, and possibly third way may not be the correct answer that the question is asking you for. And when you do the navigation portion, it's very crucial that you move quickly. So sometimes you might get it right the first time. Sometimes you might have to exhaust every single way that you can enter in, let's say, enter in a bill, right? There's multiple ways. The book only teaches you about 2 or 3. I'm going to show you all 7 or 8 ways, okay? Because on your certification exam, it may ask you to exhaust every single way that you can to enter in a bill. And if it's the correct way, or whichever one that is the correct one, you might get lucky. The first one might be correct. It could be the very 8th step itself, or 8th try yourself. Okay, just a little little fact there that every time I say there are 3 ways to get to the checking register, make sure you know what all 3 ways are. All right. So here we are in the check register, and this is how we actually enter in information using the register. All right. So again, this is more for manual accounting, obviously, right? Because we wrote a manual check. This is how you update the books manually. You're actually going to make sure that the date is correct. So in this case, I believe it is for February 8th of 2019. So February 8th of 2019. Okay. And now the first section here is going to ask me, what number are you going to use? It automatically skipped the 331, which is what the number I'm supposed to place in there. And I'm going to go ahead, and that's what you need to do, because this is a manual check. As in, you're going to record this number by looking at your checkbook. And then of course, every time you write a check, right, you need to fill out the top part of the booklet. You're going to associate that this is check number 331, which is the one that's on your actual physical check. Okay? And then now we're going to look at payee. Who did you pay? I believe we paid Bay Office Supply. Is that right?
See what it has there. It doesn't give me anything in the book.
It should. It should tell. It doesn't give you a picture, but it should tell you who.
Okay. Yeah, it's on another page.
Yeah, right here. It says right here, since Bay Office Supply, so that's who we're writing this amount to, or this, or we wrote the check out to Bay Office Supply. So Bay Office Supply. Now notice this. Oftentimes, if you, have those frequent visits, or you have those random visits to a store that you're not a vendor to, or they're not a vendor to you, or because you just decided to drive down the street and you're like, oh, Bay Office Supply Store, I'm gonna go swing by and pick up something from there, like pick up paper. All right. So oftentimes when you have those drive-bys, you're not gonna have their records are not gonna be in your vendors. All right. So if I go ahead and click tab, it's gonna say QuickBooks is gonna recognize that, hey, you do not have this person at all in any of your lists. Would you like to quick add them? And in this case, yes, I want to quick add them. And it's going to ask you, well, what are they? Are they a vendor? Are they a customer? Are they an employee? Or are they an other person? In this case, we know that they're a vendor, right? They provide us a service. Or in this case, we purchase things from them. So I'm going to click OK. Now, of course, when we talked about doing the vendors center, right, you can edit the information at any given time. It's not like you have to do it right then and there. So as you notice, I didn't even enter any information for Bay Office Supply. I didn't need to. But if for any reason that you want to be very organized, or if you need to have, or if this person is going to become a potential, vendor or supplier to you, then yes, getting their information is going to be important. And you have that information written on the receipt. So just a little fun fact there, okay? So again, Bay Office Supply, and what did we buy? Or for what amount? I think this is the amount. What account did we buy? In this case, we bought office supplies. Okay? We bought office supplies. All right? And let's see, for what amount did I purchase the office supplies for? I believe it's is it 128? 168?
128.60.
Okay.
Yeah, 128.60. 128.60.
Okay, I was close. I just mixed some numbers around. So then again, and then it's going to say, what is your memo here? Okay. And you can, this one is where we're flexible. You can add whatever details you'd like. I'm going to say I purchased office supplies. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and one thing I need to let you know too is that with QuickBooks, tab is your best friend. All right. All our lives when we were talking about Excel, right? Enter is our best friend because it allows you to shift down or move wherever you need to move using the enter key. In here, you press enter, you're going to enter in the transaction without filling every detail out. So that's why it's important that you understand that tab, okay, the tab key is going to be how you move from one box to another. Now, from what I know for this program, if you are just such a fan of the enter key, you can personally change that setting in the preferences so that every time you press enter, it changes and moves to each box. But in this case, I want to make sure that you try to get yourself used to just being to know the difference between Excel and QuickBooks is you always use tab to move along to the different fields. So that makes it a lot more easier instead of having to click on the cell itself and type everything in. That does take up a lot of time. But of course, if it makes it easier for you, like for me, I think it's easier if I could just click on it. It's not too much of a hassle for me. So that is a personal preference, all right? So now that I have the information done, I can go ahead and now press my enter key. And when I do, I get this beep of approval. And once I get that beep of approval, notice this. We started out with $11,564. Now, when we enter in that little piece of information, it automatically updates our checking account and says that, hey, now you only have $11,435 left. So it allows you to make not only keeps track of your information or your transaction that just happened. It also lets you know how much you have in your bank at all times, which is very good, especially if you're the kind of business that likes to sit down and pay like 40 bills all in one day. Can you imagine, the likelihood of you writing an NSF check, all right? So you don't want to ever make that mistake. So you want to ensure that you always have and you always know how much money you have at all times. All right. And I'm going to show you that little section here also on the write a checks window because it also reminds you how much money you have in your checking account to let you know, can you write this check? And if you can, then for how much? All right. So now that I have my entered information here, let's go ahead and take a quick glance at my new vendor here. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my vendor center real quick, just so that I can take a look at that transaction. So vendor center. So again, they are my Bay office supply. If I were to click on them, my automatic transaction has populated right here. It said that I just wrote a check out to them on this date, and here's the check number. And of course, I can modify it at any given time. If I double click on it, it's gonna populate the check or that I've written out. Okay, so that's what's sort of cool, right? Yeah. So once you know that, now again, one thing I did not mention is that every time you enter in your new vendor for any reason, you need to modify them. You can right click on them and click edit vendor. Or if you already are on their page, there's a little pencil icon at the top that allows you to modify their information at any given time. My shortcut is always, I love to double click everything. Okay, so then I could, like I said, sometimes that's also a bad thing because certain things you can't double click. But in a case like this, I can enter in their address information at any given time. I'm not mandated to do it right then and there. I'm not mandated to do it tomorrow or anything like that. Whenever I have the chance, or if I do potentially, they do become a vendor to us, then I'll fill in the information there. But for most expenses that you do like on the go, as far as keeping track of what who they are, it doesn't really matter. Okay, so just showing you that there. Now, of course, the next section is, well, I just bought office supplies, right? But I didn't buy office supplies for just one store. I actually bought it for my San Jose location, and I also bought something for my Walnut Creek location. So this is what's pretty cool about using classes, is that instead of tallying up this entire office expense right into one category, I can actually split it. Okay, so that's the next section here in this book. Now, of course, when we double clicked on my on the vendor center, we got to pop up the check. You're able to do that as well in your check register. So I can double click this right here, and here it pops up my transaction. All right. Now, the slight difference between 2018 and the 2019 is you have a little button that says you can split the payment. In mine, I just type it in. I don't even need to click the split button. Okay.
Oh.
Yes. So mine.
So you tell it which one to put it into.
Absolutely. Now, of course, I have to make sure that my numbers match, of course. But just know that if for any reason you do a typo, make sure you double check your work. All right. Everything at the top looks good. But however, like I said, I've mentioned before, I made purchases for not just only one store. So in this case, I have office supplies, right? That's okay because I actually purchased that for that. I did actually buy office supplies. I actually bought, I think it was printer paper. And it was for the San Jose location. So here I'm going to, let me pull this across so you can see it a little better. Here, I'm going to associate that this is for the San Jose location. Okay? I bought printer paper for the San Jose location. Now, did you notice that? I only typed in SA and it automatically filled it in for me. And all I had to do was double click or verify that this is the one I want to do. That's how QuickBooks makes it 10 times more easier for you to fill in your information a lot quicker. It literally does the fill tool for you. Okay. All right. So now that I associated that I did buy office supplies for, in this case, printer paper for my San Jose location. I also purchased internet cables or computer cables for my Walnut Creek location. So in this case, I believe it was, the account is going to be internet expense.
Computer and internet.
Oh, yeah, computer and internet expense. Good. Right? Because I actually bought computer, I think it was computer cables. Okay? And of course, I bought it for the Walnut Creek location. So I type in WL, boom, there it is. It filled in already for me for Walnut Creek. Now, let's go ahead and determine how much is actually being distributed between the two items, right? I believe I paid $100 for the printer paper, and then the $28.60 goes to the internet cable. Okay, so I could go ahead and manually type it in, $100. And then here, it's going to be for the remaining of the $28.60. Okay, so notice this. It's not going to calculate or fill it in for me because, again, I can accidentally make a typo and say, what if I had typed in $38.60, right? What's going to happen is because you're modifying this, it's going to also update this saying this is for $138.60, which isn't what I want. Okay, well, actually, it says 28 now, but in this case, it's saying, well, what the heck? You don't have that. You have $10 subtracting somewhere, right? So in this case, because we tailored it saying that it's supposed to be for 128, you're gonna have to make sure that you double check this because again, oftentimes typo is something that happens. So again, you have to clear that part out. So there you go, $100 and 28.60. It's supposed to actually update that. Yes. All right. So now that I go ahead and click that enter button, I got the beep of approval. So yes. So I'm on a new one. So let me click cancel out of this one or clear. All right. Let me close this window out. Okay. So again, now that I come back to my actual checking register, I'm gonna see that my check for 300 for my check 331 has been split. Okay, and it says purchase office supplies, right? And it said it's still for 128.60. All right. If I want to know the details into it, I can always double click just to verify what I did here. And here it showed me that I paid 100 towards San Jose and 28 towards Walnut Creek. Okay. And I've also recategorized my expenses. Instead of putting everything in office supplies, I've also have computer and internet expenses. Okay. So that is what's cool about that and how to split payments. Okay. So that's how you enter in a manual payment. Now, for any reason you do an electronic funds transfer or you use your debit card in an instance, you're going to apply the same concept except you're not going to have a check number. You're going to either associate it with your debit card, so write debit for debit, or you would associate EFT for electronic funds transfer. Okay. So make sure you know that part as well, is that for any reason that you're entering a debit card transaction, you're entering it, you can enter it just like this, but just make sure that the check number is going to say either debit card or EFT. That's okay. All right, let's see if we're good on time. Okay, so it is exactly 2:54. Let's go over the next concept and then we'll call a break, okay? So the next concept is actually physically writing a check. Okay? So again, we talked about splitting. Now let's go ahead and take a look at this example on how to use the write a checks function. So again, when we talked about the difference between actually owning a manual check versus using Intuit's, checks that they either provide you or send to you, again, you don't need to particularly get it from Intuit. If you plan on printing out at home your checks, you just need to make sure that you have a legitimate check type of paper. So remember with the national seal, the National Treasury seal, the holographic paper. You need to make sure that you have that. Some cases, I've never heard of it that much, but there's some special ink that you may also have to acquire to be able to print checks at home.
I believe it's got the color change stuff, kind of like how money does.
Yes.
And some of them, they're invisible unless you hold them up into light and turn them a certain way.
Yes. So in this case, you may also need to invest in a special printer ink to be able to print on the actual legitimate treasury type of paper. So with that being said, that's where you can go ahead and use the write a checks option, because if you are planning to write checks at home using QuickBooks, it makes writing checks a lot easier. Okay. Of course, I'm not saying disregard manual checkbooks, but it does actually make it a lot more easier, especially because you get to see the bill and you get to pay it right then and there, and all the information is there. So that's what's great about that. But let's go ahead and take a look. So there are two ways that you can write a check. Okay. Third way, if I would say, okay, no, there are 3 ways. All right, sorry about that. So first one is going to be on your home page, right? If you click on your home page, you click that write a checks option underneath banking, it will automatically populate this form right here. Pretty standard. It's gonna entail what accounts that you're associating each one, and it's gonna give you the amount that you are paying, and of course, it's also gonna allow you to, modify the check number, right? So
Okay.
if it's a manual one, obviously the 300s are your manual one, and anything that you print off of into it cannot be identical to your manual checkbook. Okay?
Okay.
But notice this, I'm in my checking account, and look, I have my account balance given to me at all times. Okay, so that also gives you a little preventative measure. Every time you write a check, you at least know that you should have enough money every time you write a check. All right, so that's one way of doing it. Okay, second way that you could do it again is if you go up to your banking menu. Okay, you can also write a check right here. Where is it? Write a check. First thing. Excuse me. First thing you can see here is you see write a checks. Okay. And then, of course, with the new 2018, I'm not expecting you to know this, but if you are asked this question at all, you actually can write your check using the bill tracker. Let me find my bill tracker on my icon bar. Here you go. You go to bill tracker, and you actually do have the availability to be able to write a check. Okay, it just says check,
Okay.
but you'd be able to write a check using this. So if I were to click on it, there it is. Right, same window popped up to write a check. Okay, so yes, you're able to do that as well. Okay. So, of course, for this one, we are looking at our checking account, and the date is the same date. However, here's a few tips that you should know as well. When you are writing a check, you do have the options to assign numbers now or to assign as soon as you print them. So what oftentimes the best way to do or be productive, I guess, would be that you would write down a whole bunch of checks, wait till the very end, and then print them out. Okay? So how you would be able to do that is you have the option up here at the top that says allows you to print later. If you choose to print later, notice this, my check number has disappeared, or it says to print. Okay, so once I've done that, I know when I print it, I can make any number that is whatever I'm supposed to write it in as, right? So in this case, we're going to use 6001 because again, these are Intuit's checks that we've got, okay? Not our manual one. And of course, the date's the same, but this time we are making a payment to... Let's see who we're making the payment to. We are making a payment to...
Is it Orlando Properties?
Orlando Properties. So notice this. I'm going to type in OR, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's automatically going to highlight this information for me. And if I click on it, notice this. All the address and everything that's associated to Orlando Properties fills in automatically for me. So again, it allows me to produce things a lot more quickly. All right. I'm also going to make a note here that this should be rent expense. Okay. All right. And then now we're going to come down here. So when I typed in Orlando Properties, it automatically assumed that we have rent expense that is expected to be due. And we'll take a look at this in chapter 13 on how to memorize reports or memorize transactions, because notice that I didn't have to click and say I'm paying for rent. It automatically associated with this particular vendor. And because it saved me a lot more time, all I need to do is enter in the amount. So in this case, is it $2,300? I think that's $2,300.
3,200.
32. Oh, okay. Oh, I'm off today. 3,200. Notice if I type it in here, it should fill. That's what I was talking about. It should fill it up here for you. And that, I don't know why I didn't do it that last time, but it's supposed to fill it in there automatically for you. All right. So once we see that and we have the checks to be printed, we're going to go ahead and click Save and Close. Now notice this. Why is there two options? You have Save and Close and Save and New. Save and Close means that when you're saving this transaction, it's going to close out, and that means the next transaction you do is going to be something else. It's not going to be another check you're going to write. If you click Save and New, what happens is it's going to save this check, and it's going to open a new checking window, meaning we're going to enter in another check. So that's what makes it so much more easier to be able to manage your bills, because you can write checks all in one go. Okay? But in this case, I'm only writing one, and I'm going to click Save and Close. Then they say, what does it say here? That one or more items have not been assigned. Okay, so notice this. Because we're writing an expense out, right? QuickBooks, it's also mentioned in the books. If we do not assign a class to this expense, QuickBooks will not let you continue on. Unless you click Save Anyway, right? But in this case, I forgot to write what location I actually paid this property to. Okay, so in this case, I believe is it the San Jose? I think it is the San Jose. So
San Jose. Yeah,
exactly.
San Jose rent in the memo part says.
Yes, for San Jose. Right? Because we have two store locations. So I need to make sure that I write here, right here. I could just do the same thing for just like regular computer. I can copy this text and I can place it in here just like that. All right? To save me some extra time. And again, because I need to associate this expense to our particular class, it tells me I need to categorize it. So in this case, San Jose. And then now I can properly say Save and Close. And once you get that beep of approval, then there it goes. And just to double check that my check actually went through, I'm going to go to my check register again once more, and I'm going to notice this. My check, which still has to be printed, is going to be for Orlando Properties for the $3,200, and it updated my amount in my checking account down to $8,238. Okay? So let's go ahead and take a break here since it's 3:05. When we come back, I'm going to teach you how to print these checks. Actually, no. Printing the checks is actually after we enter in the bill. So the next one we're going to do is we're going to look at the bill. We're going to see how we pay it and then how we print our checks afterwards. Okay? So let's go ahead and take a break. It is 3:05 right now. Usually, QuickBooks, I want a 15-minute break, so please be back by 3:20.
Okay.
All right. See you then.